The night was calm as Jack stood in his small kitchen, staring at the coffee machine. His military service days were long over, along with the adrenaline and chaos that once defined his life. Now, all that remained was a quiet and dull routine. Yet, something about that night felt different. The air carried a strange tension, like the calm before a storm. As he poured his coffee, a sudden bright flash of light filled the room. Jack dropped his cup instinctively and grabbed the nearest knife. Turning quickly, he saw two tall, slender figures materializing before him. Their dark blue skin glimmered, and their pitch-black eyes stared directly into his soul. Jack's first thought was that he was being robbed, but these were no ordinary intruders. They weren't human. They were extraterrestrials. Jack had heard stories of first contact, but none had prepared him for this. His heart pounded as he evaluated the situation. Before he could act, one of the figures stepped forward, extending a long, silver-clad arm. Jack felt a sharp sting in his neck. He tried to react, but his body froze. A warm sensation flooded his veins, and his vision blurred. The last thing he saw was the glowing alien eyes before everything went black. When Jack woke up, he was no longer in his kitchen. He lay on a cold metallic floor in an enormous hall with strange architecture. The space seemed endless, with walls adorned with glowing alien symbols. At the far end of the hall, sitting on an elaborate crystalline throne, was a tall, majestic figure. Her skin was the same dark blue as the others, but her silver and black robe shimmered in the dim light. Her piercing black eyes locked onto Jack with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. She wasn't just any alien. She was their queen. "You have been brought here for a purpose." Her commanding voice echoed through the chamber. Jack scrambled to his feet, his mind racing to make sense of the situation. Purpose? Why me? I'm just a retired soldier trying to live a quiet life. The Queen's expression remained cold. "My daughter's flame is fading, and only you can reignite it." Jack blinked, utterly confused. "Flame? What are you talking about?" I don't even know what that means." The Queen stood, her imposing presence filling the room. "You are not here by chance. Your species possesses the key to restoring the life force of our people. You will do as I command." A shiver ran down Jack's spine. He had faced danger before, but this was beyond anything he'd ever encountered. Despite his fear, a flicker of defiance stirred within him. "And what if I refuse?" he challenged, his voice steady. The Queen's eyes narrowed, her lips curving into a thin smile. "Refusal is not an option. Reignite the flame, or face a fate worse than death." From the shadows, another figure emerged. This one was smaller, with pale blue skin and vibrant red hair. Her eyes, unlike the Queen's cold gaze, were filled with sadness. She moved slowly, her frail body trembling with every step. "This is my daughter, Lara," the Queen said, her tone softening slightly. "Her life force is fading, and the prophecy foretells that only a human can restore it. You, Jack Dalton, are that human." Jack's mind raced as he took in Lara's fragile appearance. She didn't look much older than 20 by human standards, yet there was an ancient weariness in her eyes. He had no idea what this flame was or how to restore it, but it was clear her life depended on him. "Take him to the chamber," the Queen ordered. "The ritual must begin." Jack was escorted through a series of narrow corridors, his heart pounding with every step. The aliens flanking him moved with mechanical precision, their faces expressionless. He had no idea where they were taking him or what awaited him in the so-called ritual chamber, but one thing was certain. There was no escape. They arrived at a large door that slid open soundlessly, revealing a dimly lit room bathed in a soft blue glow. In the center of the chamber stood a stone altar covered in intricate symbols that seemed to pulse with life. Small, glowing orbs floated above the altar, emitting a faint humming sound. Lara stood at the edge of the altar, her frail figure illuminated by the ethereal light. She was trembling, her skin a pale blue that appeared almost translucent under the glow. Her once vibrant red hair now hung limp around her shoulders, and her eyes were filled with fear and resignation. The guards pushed Jack forward, forcing him to stand before the altar. The queen entered the room behind them, her gaze burning with intensity. "The ritual begins now," she declared. "You must connect with her. Only through your human bond can her flame be reignited." Jack's throat tightened. Connect with her? How am I supposed to do that? He barely understood what was happening, let alone what was expected of him. Lara stepped closer, her movements shaky and unsteady. She extended a trembling hand, her cold fingers brushing against Jack's. A spark of energy jolted through him, making his skin tingle. He could feel the faint pulse of her life force, weak but still present. As their hands clasped, Jack felt a strange warmth spreading through his chest. It was as if something deep within him was awakening, responding to her presence. The room seemed to pulse and sway in rhythm with their heartbeats, and the symbols on the altar glowed brighter. But despite the energy building between them, nothing happened. The flame remained dormant. Lara's grip tightened, desperation flickering in her eyes. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't feel the connection." Jack's mind raced as he tried to figure out what was missing. He had no idea how to ignite this flame, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let her die. "We'll try again," he said firmly. "But we need to stay calm." Lara nodded weakly, her breathing shallow as she tried to regain some composure. Jack wasn't entirely sure what he was doing, but he knew panic would only make things worse. They had to approach this with some kind of plan, no matter how impossible the task seemed. The queen stood silently in the corner of the chamber, her gaze fixed on them with an intensity that made the air feel heavier. The pressure was suffocating, but Jack forced himself to focus on Lara. Gently, he squeezed her hand, feeling the slight tremor in her fingers. "Let's take it one step at a time," he said, more to reassure her than anything else. "We have to find the connection first. Maybe it's not just about physical contact." Lara blinked, her eyes searching as for guidance. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," Jack admitted. "But this energy, this flame or whatever it is, it has to be something deeper than just touching. It has to be about trust or understanding or something we both need to feel." He could sense the skepticism in her silence, but she nodded slightly nonetheless. They had no choice but to try. Jack closed his eyes, calming his breathing. He let go of the swirling anxiety in his mind, the confusion of being thrust into an alien world, the impossibility of their situation. Instead, he focused on Lara, the person in front of him who was fighting for her life. She followed his lead, her breathing slowing as well. Their hands remained clasped, and as the seconds passed, Jack felt the warmth between them intensify. The symbols on the altar began to glow again, their light flickering softly at first, then growing brighter and steadier. There was a shift in the air, subtle but undeniable. The tension between them began to dissolve, replaced by something deeper, a shared sense of purpose. "It feels different this time," Lara whispered, her voice tinged with newfound hope. "I think I can feel it." "Keep going," Jack encouraged. "We're getting there." The orbs around them hummed louder, their light intensifying, as if responding to the energy building between Jack and Lara. Jack's heart seemed to synchronize with the pulsing glow of the chamber. He felt an overwhelming warmth spreading through his veins, as if a part of his own essence was being drawn toward Lara, giving her strength. Lara's pale blue skin began to regain its vibrant hue, a soft glow emanating from her as her life force returned. Her once dim eyes now shone with a fiery determination. The trembling in her body ceased, and she stood taller, her frailty melting away. She wasn't just recovering. She was transforming. The glow of the altar shifted from a cold blue to a warm, fiery orange. The orbs swirling in the air burst into radiant sparks, like stars exploding in the night sky. Lara's grip on Jack's hand tightened as the transformation completed, her energy radiating like the sun. When the ritual ended, Jack found himself staring at a reborn Lara, her skin shimmering with a golden glow. Her once limp red hair now flowed like molten fire, streaked with gold. Her eyes, once filled with fear, now blazed with a fierce determination. She was no longer the frail princess he had met. She was a queen reborn.